is a special day. With me, I have Ben Lopez. Ben is it's just an honor having you here. Ben Lopez is a producer. He's I think you direct some music videos in the past?
I basically have been the Swiss Army knife of every job. I've been
Every
from
job you've done. Let's say that he's a director. Because I know you. I know you're so involved also with the writing process. So I mean, when I think of you, I think of so many things. And for those of you listening right now, Ben, if you have anything to do with the Latino community in this business, in the entertainment business, he's the man to know. And for those Latino kids out there, anybody, he's the person that represents the best in us, the artists out there struggling, hustling. He's one of those that not just speaks for us, but fights for us and just puts a good face every time. And Ben, the one thing I love about you and is that I've met you as a teacher. We were in Mexicali and I knew you were a producer. I knew very little about you, but I knew I met you as a teacher. You're like, I'm about to teach these kids about producing, I think it was. And basically, while I was meeting you, you gave me a class. And then you're like, if you want another class, come tomorrow to my class. So I mean, I love that about you. I started respecting you because I really appreciate people that teach. It's very easy to be like, oh, I'm in the movies. I am in charge of this. I'm in charge of that. But not many people say, I'm going to fly to Mexicali to this festival to teach a class. And that says a lot about who you are. And then after that, we met in LA and then I realized, oh my God, Ben is not just this teacher. He's also the executive director of NALIP, which is the National Association of Latino Independent Producers, which is huge. And I don't know if many people get to meet you, like me, but when I think of you, I think of an educator. I think of someone that wants to educate not just, different cultures about the Latino culture, but also our own culture about who we are, about what we have, how can we really improve ourselves. And I wanted to start asking you, where does that fire come from? Like, where does that intention to educate? Because you know that by educating us, we can project better. We can understand better, right? Where does that come from? Because I love that about you.
I think as an early age, I was taught to always pay it forward. That no matter how fortunate you were to be alive, be learning, be thriving in whatever industry, is like always give back to the community. And
Yes.
If you can't give a job or even money or anything, at least give your time. And time is very precious, right? And so I was gifted that since I was a little kid. And I think I told you that story when I grew up, I was born in Mexico City. I grew up in this little town of Guaymas, Sonora, Mexico, and then Tucson, Arizona. So, but in Guaymas, I had a Cinema Paradiso type of life where instead of befriending the projectionist of the movie theater, I befriended the ticket lady. And that was such a gift to me because that was one of the best escapes that I had. But a lot of people didn't know, like, well, how did you do that, Ben? How old were you? I was like, well, I was believe it or not, between 6 to 9 years old.
Wow.
This is what I would do.
You were really that kid from Cinema Paradiso.
I would raise chickens, and a lot of people don't know this. I would raise little chicks into chickens, and then I would sell them, and then I would buy books. I would read those books, and then I would trade them or sell them, and then that's how I got the money to go to the movies.
Wow.
Once that lady found that out, she was like, you know what? You don't have to pay half of the time. Like, don't worry. And then after a while, she just let me go, and I would obviously use that money for popcorn or to bring other friends. And I would spend there all day. And because of that, and obviously other teachers that were also very giving to me, I always felt like that lady made such a difference of letting me, if some of those movies that I watched, by the way, they were probably R-rated, but guess what? She just that generosity that came from a community member, I felt so supported. And then people started giving me books once they knew that I love books, and they were like, Ben, read this book and read that
Wow.
book. And so that was my early part. So ever since those, growing up years, it inculcated in me that the gift of giving. And anytime that someone tells me, hey, Ben, you have, because now I'm so busy, right? Everybody's busy, but
Yes.
people tell me, hey, can you mentor? Can you go and speak to a class of, especially people that are trying to get into this industry,
Mhm.
young folks, emerging folks? I can talk to anybody, but I definitely have a soft spot for those folks that are lesser fortunate, the ones that
Yes.
are grossly underrepresented in the industry. So I love to be able to give back. So that's how you met me in that stage, and I still do it every day.
Not many people have that quality or that sensibility, and that's just awesome.
I had a question for you. I know that you're supposed to ask me questions, but see,
Yeah,
this is
no.
what was the first early moment in your life when you remember wanting to get into this industry? What was that first mentor that you had that you remember? Was, I don't know if it was a movie theater that you met somebody there, or if it was maybe a play that you did. I'm curious about that.
Oh, I danced my whole life, right? Since I was a child. And dancing is
Yeah,
like telling a story with your body. It's just music,
that's right.
and you're telling a story with your body from the beginning to the end. Also dancing is such a short career. And I
Mm,
always wanted a career for life. I just didn't like short term commitments with anything. I just never liked it, never felt comfortable. Uh,
mm,
and and when I turned 15, I told my parents I don't want to dance anymore. I started seeing my friends getting injured, and I'm like, I don't know if this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I mean, it's such a short career. And then a friend of mine said, "Why don't you try theater? Theater
mm,
is like kind of like dancing. You're on a stage, you're telling a story, but it's with your voice. You
mm,
actually have to memorize and say a dialogue, and there's an audience." And I don't know why nobody ever said this before, but I just went to the theater in Havana. I went to La Casa de la Cultura del Vedado, and I went to the person that he recommended me to. And Ben, it was weird. I sat down just to watch the class, and I was terrified to say, "Hi, I want to start this," because I didn't know what this is. But I sat down and I watched the first scene. They were putting a scene from Santa Camila de la Habana Vieja. That's a
mm,
play, very, very authentic Cuban play. And this, my teacher, Humberto Rodriguez Garcia, which is like one of the biggest mentors in Havana, he said, "Okay, let's do Santa Camila," and they started doing this, and I saw it so hard. I
mm,
This lady transformed into something else, and I remember I felt so intimidated by that. But that intimidation became excitement and empower. And I was sitting in that chair like, oh my God, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And that's how I discovered it. It's just being exposed to it once.
mm,
I was just
mm.
exposed to it, and that's it. And then the way I stood up and I talked to the teacher, I said, I want to do that. I knew it. I was like, I could do this forever. I could be an old lady and play anything. And that longevity, I feel like, you tell me, when it comes to this business or any business, it's so refreshing to think of long-term relationships, right?
Oh yeah.
Like
Hmm.
when you get into this business, you have to think of yourself in this career in the long term. And I don't I'm when I say this, I don't mean just to be an actor. Like I decided to
Right.
write, I decided to direct, but I'm in the same business. And when
Mhm.
you think of friends and people you talk to and they help you grow, I want to keep them forever because I feel like those are the people that will really push you, right?
Oh yeah.
like like
It,
you push,
I
like when
like.
I called you about the podcast, I was, because you knew
Yeah.
so many people in the Latino community, and then you said, well, I could do it. I'm like, oh my God, this will be amazing conversation. But you see, it's one of those things that those relationships, they're like the ones that would push you, they would challenge you.
I call them accountability buddies because they're, and I
Nice.
always call it diamonds polishing diamonds, right?
Yes.
Because once it is a commitment to be in this career. I admire all the work that you put in. A lot of people, I don't know if I'm sure that you covered a lot of parts of your life in the podcast,
Mhm.
but people, I'm sure, because I got in a really great glimpse and talking to you about, life, because I know that you work so hard and sacrifice so much that I knew immediately that you were one of the good ones. I knew that
Oh,
because understanding this career, you run into a lot of talent, a lot of actors that are trying to come up, and everybody has their different takes on the way they approach the art and craft, the body being an instrument, the way they're trying to figure out. And I knew immediately that you were working on turning yourself into, not only you were an entrepreneur, but you were creating opportunities for
yes.
you to express your craft in a much bigger level. And that
Mhm.
immediately felt, that's someone that's an ally, because that's exactly what I'm trying to do in my space. So I always think of, the stories that we're always attracted by is the quest, right? When you go
Right.
on a quest together, right, you're able to travel farther when you have several people that are part of that quest with you. And in this case, you've been such a source of inspiration, and we're mutually helping each other out, because the North Star that we set for ourselves is not just like, what are we going to do in 5 years, Ben? It's like, no, we're going to go beyond 5 years.
Yeah,
We're going to
of
go,
course.
we're going to disrupt this industry in 50 years. Right. Before that, right? I think that in less than 3 years, we can, between 3 and 5 years, just to be realistic, we can get our numbers of Latinos. It's not just the numbers, right? The quantities, the quality of Latinos in our industry to be creating quality type of shows on every single platform, right? I
Ah,
think we're very close to getting there. There's like a tsunami of talent out there. Another area that I really appreciate about, that's why I felt the kinship with you, was that you always want to make everybody around you better. You're so generous. Even all the actors that you work with, they always
mhm.
express that about you all the time.
Oh,
Because I
that's
watch
sweet.
the interviews too, and they always say she's so generous because, and I know this from being on set, that
Mhm.
sometimes when, let's say you're not on camera, right? Let's say they're playing off you, and you're basically, the back of your head is showing, you're giving them so much to work with. That
Yes.
is a generous performer. That's
Mhm.
someone that's always giving back, and they make you better. So from a producing and perspective, I see that's someone that's always going to travel far because you're always giving back. So when I see someone like you, I think of, like, obviously, how can I help her? What
Mhm.
is she? What does she want to launch? What is her 3 to 5 year to 10 year plan? And how does she want to disrupt the industry in the
Mhm.
in the most positive way? And so I think that people that are you know how it is. A lot of people are lost. Sometimes they get lost and they're not even in Hollywood, right? Sometimes
Yes.
they show up in LA. They buy a plane ticket, or they drive all the way to Los Angeles or New York. Either they want to go off Broadway doing plays, or they
Mhm.
show up with maybe, I don't know, $500 in their
500
pocket.
bucks?
Back to Mexico.
250? That's all I hear.
And by the way, it's not just those ones who maybe have $500. There's also the ones that are crossing over from Latin America, the ones that
Yes.
maybe they experience success in Televisa, Caracol, and all these
Mhm.
different channels, even from Spain. They arrive in LA and they realize, uh-oh, even though I'm a star in that country, here in LA, I got to start from the bottom. And
Crash,
so
yeah.
that's another key part about seeing the humbleness, because I know from everything that I discussed with you that from the moment you arrived here, you were not afraid to work, because you were
No.
always doing that, the hustle. And so
Yes.
those are the people that I want to collaborate with, the ones that are not afraid to put in the work. You're
Mhm.
also naturally curious. That's something
Yes.
that, believe it or not, you always want to know why things work and how
Mhm.
you can become better. And so I love that aspect of you. Not everybody's in this quest to learn and learn and learn. They kind of want to just go through the motions and see where it takes them. I think I shared that story with you of someone that, an actor that I met, that the first thing that he bought from some commercials that he did was like, I think he made like $10,000, right? Just from a
Uh-huh.
commercial.
Uh-huh.
And I remember hearing the story because I was sitting having lunch with a lot of actors, and he's like, "Oh yeah," and I'm like, "So what did you do with it?" Because I was thinking, "Oh, maybe he's taking classes like with Meissner or Stanislavski, or like he's going to the gym." I'm
Investing in
sure.
yourself. Yeah.
But you know what I heard? And I think you were like, you almost spit up your coffee when you were talking to me, or food. I can't remember right now. But I told you he's in two pairs of pants, like jeans, that were like $5,000 design jeans, two of them. And I'm like thinking, well, if you're maybe in fashion or maybe a model, I get it, or indulgent. But I'm like, that person could have advanced so much more. So a
Mm.
lot of people that come to this industry, sometimes they get a little cash, or maybe they get one show, one commercial, and they think they made it to the pinnacle of the business. But I always think of long sustainable goals to try to advance. And you were one of I meet hundreds of actors here in this industry,
Mm-hmm.
and you were one of the first ones, that I heard that, you know what, Ben, just in case, I do have my work, I do all of this, but I'm still hustling. And I
Oh yeah.
love that about it. So those are
Yeah.
the type of people. So anyway, so going back to the quest, I think that's where you kind of gravitate towards your tribe. Who's going to truly make you better?
Right. Right. When it's funny that you say that, when you get into this business is not a business like being a doctor. Like you do 5 years of like college, and then you pick a profession, and then you can go to a hospital, and you still have to hustle, but it's kind of
Right.
predictable. And this
Mhm.
business is very interesting. It's like not many businesses are like that. Like you can make it to LA with $500, and you can still make it within 6 months to a big movie. Like you can break through, but you can also be in a position that you have to hustle for years and years, and you see nothing, no results. But the key is, when you make it to LA, what is your intention? Why are you here? Why are you doing this? Because it's when you answer why, that's gonna carry you through the hard times. Like when you get no response, you're like, I remember why I'm here. I'm here because I have a purpose. I love telling stories. I love interpreting this. You need to answer that. Why are you doing this in the first place? Because that's and then everything you do has to lead you towards that, to keep up that answer. Like, I'm doing this because of this. And it's funny because some people, like, yes, they make some money and they think they make it. They don't really understand why they're doing this then. Maybe they're doing it to dress better. Maybe they're doing it to like feed something that they are insecure about. Maybe they needed to like create a facade that they thought Hollywood is, but it's really not. And I always had that very clear. And you're right. I always felt that with you. Well, I met you in Mexico teaching kids. So I figured this is someone that is passionate about it, what you do. And then obviously meeting you in different aspects of your life as a director in NALIP, the events that you put together, the people you connect. And not just that, Ben, and the summits you do, you don't realize, but you also educate. You put people in a place to educate others. When you cannot do it yourself, you actually direct an entire summit that is all about education. And you have not many people in this business do that. No, it's unbelievable. And that pays off because everybody is being showered by your vision. And eventually these people are going to become professionals. And guess what's going to happen? Ben created this future that I live today. I have learned so much about women in this industry through NALIP, through you, through your curation of who should I learn from. And I mean, it goes to tell you that everything you're planting, it's really working, and it's working through education. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned well, first of all, thank you. And then two, it's also teamwork, right? So
Massive.
I've been forward. So I try to bring up people the way that they brought me up. So the best
so nice.
the best mentors that I have always been women of color, like especially Latinas, Black women. They've always held me to a higher standard. When you think you're doing great, but then in the perception of other people, sometimes they're like, "Ben, you're doing good, but you could do better." Now, some people, you know how it is, especially in this business, you take that feedback and you could be like, "Oh my God, I'm messing up," or "I'm doing it wrong," or you could be defensive, or you could be like, "You know what? Maybe I am messing up. Maybe they don't know anything they don't know what they're talking about." In my case, because my sister raised me, early enough, my mom was not in my life. When I was a little kid, my parents got divorced. My sister took that job. Well, because it was like kids raising kids, right? So she was not even a teenager and she was raising me. And so
Wow.
she always held me to a higher standard. So the best mentors that I've had in my life, by the way, I'm still in contact with, for example, it's a fifth grade ESL teacher, sixth grade ESL teacher,
What?
Miss McBride. I'm still in touch with her. This is after so many years because I always told her, you gave me the ability to speak this language. And she's like, no, you did all the hard work. I'm like, but you don't understand, Miss. I still call her Miss McBride. I'm like, this power to be able to touch people, like, because now I'm able to pass on that gift of teaching. So when I entered this industry, it was mostly, I'm gonna be honest, it was mostly women of color, Latinas, that decided to take a chance on me. And I always felt so grateful for them. So it's my
Wow.
job to get back.
That makes
And so
sense.
now, yeah. And the other part of it was being a matchmaker. I don't know why. Maybe it's in the DNA. Maybe it's in the water. Maybe the way that I grew up in Tucson, you kind of feel like beyond giving back, I love when people succeed. You know what I mean? Like when you get nomination, when you get on the trades, and I celebrate with you. That's why I'm one of the first ones to tweet and be like, congratulations. I see you kicking butt. And even when, let's just say, even with other actors, maybe their show is struggling, or maybe they're going through bad ratings or whatever, I'm still there. Like,
you're the first cheerleader. Yes.
En las buenas y en las malas, on the good times and the challenging times, right? So I love when people succeed. Not everybody's able to do that because in this industry, when there's very limited number of Latinos, right, here on the screen, when you see another Latino succeed, sometimes you feel like, oye, pero si if that person's succeeding, está ganando el premio, then I don't get that prize. I'm like, I don't think so. There's more for everybody.
Yes.
So the other part that I was inculcated by this women was, can you inspire other people? Like, be a creative whisperer. And I learned to become a creative whisperer.
Wow.
When I was kind of like the behind the scenes, kind of like the ninja, the Jedi behind the scenes, like, ¿qué necesitas, Danay? What do you need? Like, oh, no, es que mira, estoy buscando IP para televisión y quiero buscar un lector. I'm like, okay, great. So for me, those are basically like marching orders in my brain. Even if you're not asking me to do that, like Ben, I didn't, sometimes that happens, right? I didn't expect for you to come up with like 2 or 3 names. I'm already thinking, okay, Danay está haciendo un show, va a hacer esto. Like she's thinking of like, oh, she's going to be directing, like, oh, she's going to direct. And eventually who knows? She's going to become executive producer of many shows coming up and so on. So I'm always thinking, how do I become the best advisor, but also the best champion for her vision? Right? Because I want to support that vision, and also connect with real stuff, not just like, I can give you advice all day, right? Or what you should do? Everybody does that in this industry, right? Your managers, agents, everybody, you know what you should do? But in this case, it's like, mira, I know you didn't ask for this, but I think you might want to read this book, this website. And by the way, do you know what's going on in the industry? That's what I found is the most helpful way to help people. Sometimes you don't tell them what to do. It's better not to tell them what to do. It's better to like
educate them,
right? And then open up the world. And then sometimes they give you more information back because they might say, so, you know what, Ben, I think that this industry is going to move here. And I take that information and I'm like, you know what? It's so smart because we're now helping each other out the way other cohorts of people help themselves out. So I'm a nerd, by the way. That's the other thing that I'm so proud of. Back in the day, people used to think, well, nerds is like a demeaning word, this and that. I'm happy and proud to be a nerd because I go back to the history of this industry and I see you, right? Just like the stars of every era, I see you're the star of this era that's building up. And people have no idea that you're about to blow that. I can't cuss on the show, but you're going to blow up even. And don't understand what it takes to do that. So if I'm able to be part of that journey, I think that's the best way. But also the business, I think at some point we'll cover that on this podcast, is how to demystify the business. Not only, I think you cover the relationship aspect, the fact that you got to trust people, because it's hard to trust people here in the land of maybes, Hollywood, La La Land, right?
La La Land.
Being able to kind of like, hey, you know what? Are you paying attention to what's going on in TV versus film versus this? Where's the money being invested coming from? Who are the people to know? And I love being able to see like, hey, there's a grenade or a pitfall coming up right there in front of your path. other people in the business, they might not warn you because either because they're too busy or maybe they just kind of want you to fail. They're like,
Yeah.
but ¿qué pasa? But for me, it's like, no, you know what? Watch out, because that could be a challenge that will keep you really distracted for 3 to 5 years, and you don't need that in your life.
Right.
So that kinship and allyship and mentorship, empowerment, everything that we've been discussing, it's rare in this industry because, can I be honest, it's because Latinos, at least in this side of things, I think Latinos we're behind about 30, 40 years in this business. Wow. And so we're catching up now. So that's why it feels so good to get to know people like us that are now helping other people to empower them.
Yes.
And this is the best part. We're not asking for anything in return except, can you guys pay it forward? Like, I never ask for anything in return. I always tell people, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you mentor someone? Because I know in your case, you've been mentoring a lot of people already. But I always ask, because they always ask me, Ben, what can I do for you? I'm like, just mentor some, especially young Latinas, Afro Latinx coming up, LGBTQ plus Latino people of color. Can you do that? Because there's not many of us up here. So anyway, doing that brings, not only does it bring warmth into my heart, but I'm also thinking about the business. I'm also thinking about resiliency.
You're doubling down.
Yes, because people. I'm investing in the nation of the world, because you're going to be changing this industry. You're going to be iconic. You already are in my eyes, but you're going to be better. So you know what I mean?
Yeah, I when I came here to the US, I didn't speak English, and when I talking about finding people that vibrate at the same time, right? I always focus on contribution. At first, I wanted to understand the language. Then I want to be understood, which is like, do you understand? I would say that. Is it clear? Do you get it? Like, I would say that all the time. And then after that, I would try to contribute. Like, how can I help you? How can I help you? How can I learn? Because by helping others, you learn so much without being in the spotlight. You know, when you help others, you're really helping other people, but you're learning through them too, by helping them with things that you never knew before. Hey, can you help me with that? I've never done that before. I'll do it. Let me figure this out. And it has a lot to be, you have to be curious too. And you have to not be afraid to say no. And people are very concerned about what others will think of them. And that can really stop your process. If you just don't give a crap and give it a shot and focus on contribution, eventually that's going to pay off so much, because that's really, for me, being financially secure, it has to do with the contribution that you put out there that eventually is going to be paid into a salary. So the sharper you are in your craft, the more value you're going to become. And then therefore, eventually you're going to be 1 in 10 that could do that job, which is so hard to do. And I felt like being a Latina that comes from another country that didn't speak the language, I didn't focus on the problems. I focused on the solutions and finding those. I'm being a nerd, like a crazy nerd about those solutions. Like, I don't know what to do, but I'm going to read everything. I'm going to watch everything. And I think that anybody can relate to this. If you're Asian, you know, if you don't really know if you're afraid to jump into anything, just be a nerd about solutions. Like, just go crazy with that. Because believe it or not many people are like that. You think that you're against like a bunch of people wanting to succeed? Not really.
I have a question for you about the language aspect of things, because it happens to me all the time. Because now it's happening to me in reverse. When I do presentations in Latin America or in Spain, or, you know, a lot of times I'm doing it virtually now. Sometimes I struggle now with Spanish.
I know.
And I know we all talk about that, ni de aquí, ni de allá, and people are like, well, you got to find your identity and you got to figure out about your place in the world, your existential crossroads, where you're at in life. So here, as US-based Latinx, by the way, that would take 3-hour podcast just to talk about what Latinx means. But I think for me, it just means an very inclusive type of term. It means on the side rights, on the right side of human rights, and, you know, and really embrace your people. And I get a lot of flack from people saying, well, what about Latina? What about this? What about that? I always tell them, look, that's the term that I use to make sure that my people feel welcome. And some people feel comfortable using Hispanic, Latino, all of that. But we're not going to get into that because that would be another podcast. I'm curious about the language aspect of it because for the first few years, because both of you and I were essentially immigrants. I feel like I'm generation 1.5 already because I got here very early as a youngster, right? So I absorbed all of American culture. I always felt more American than Americans, right? Because I knew history better than America, like the typical, U.S. citizen. They know their history, but then later on, after a while, I was like, how come I know more of their history than they? And they always saw me as a foreigner, right? But I was embraced by good people, at least in Arizona. But also, I got I'm sure that all of us have encountered that racism, xenophobia, NIMBYism, all the isms. And in my case, I always felt like, okay, I got to improve my accent, el acento, because certain words and then there's that insecurity sometimes that grabs you especially as a youngster. There's part of almost like a trauma, PTSD, of bullies making fun of you by the way you pronounce things, right? And as adults, people can still be bullies, by the way. They're like, así no se pronuncia, especially when people say, it's Los Angeles. I'm like, no, it's Los Angeles. Now I'm starting to become more like, are you kidding me? Like,
are you kidding me? It's Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, right? Or El Paso, stuff like that. And now people tell me it's Tucson. I'm like, no, it's Tucson. That's actually. But now I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit more about that, but also the reverse effect of that when you're now talking in Spanish and Español con otras audiencias, with other audiences, when they're kind of like, oh, I didn't quite understand what you're saying. Especially a lot of our terms about the industry are in English. Like the other day, I was trying to talk about reverse crossover and how to find IP that was, and I was like, propiedad intelectual, IP. And they're like, no, hablamos inglés también. We speak English too. I'm like, you're right. I need to understand the subtleties of that. So I'm just curious about how you feel about, because sometimes you feel something else I want to add too. Sometimes you feel a little frustrated because you know what that word is in whatever language, but then you are kind of like sometimes struggle with the way that you're being perceived. But now it's with my Latinoamericanos.
Your actual people.
I want to be accepted and embraced by them, right? Because I want to make sure that they're inspired by everything that we're achieving in the US and making it more accessible. I call them my primos. Todos nuestros primos en la
Son los primos.
Even brasileiros, ¿no? que hablan portugués, right? They speak mostly Portuguese. I want to make sure that they feel welcome. But I wonder how you play with, especially with those dynamics. How do you navigate in those waters? Because I'm sure you had to promote your show in Latin America as well and do it in Spanish. So I'm just curious about that aspect of it.
When I came to the US, I focused so much on trying to learn English to be understood. Then I focused, like you said, on the accent. And it was so hard because you play characters, but a lot of the meetings are like audition, one-on-one. You get to an audition, you're talking to the director, the producer, the casting director. You're like, oh, I can't just like talk without an accent, only like my line. I have to really project. And so I focused so much on being effective in this culture because I was not dealing with my culture. So I was in Los Angeles. I was all days English. So I have to be effective here to survive as an actor or as a person. And I knew I was behind. I knew I was behind in everything. Like I had to learn how to communicate in English. I was behind. I didn't know. So I became a nerd about making things work, obsessive about it. About like being understood, being clear in an interview. Oh, I need to know my log line. I need to know what this intention is. I know the message of my movie. I want to just be so clear. So then I go to I go to do a movie in Venezuela, and then talking about a character, I couldn't say it in Spanish. Ben, it made me so sad. It made me feel for the first time, because in the US, I'm from Cuba and I'm trying to get through you. I know who I am and I'm going to get through you. But now I am I'm not from Venezuela, but I'm in a country that speaks my language, that we dance the same music. We laugh at the same things, yet I could not be effective. And I remember I went to my hotel room and I sat down and I felt like I was missing a part of me because I was so focused on on getting to people that are, in the US. I just, that I forgot, like a string was missing in me. And then I realized not a string, I was missing so many strings. And then I started being a nerd into, okay, how can I really project, talk about a character with that vocabulary that I never used before? Because when I left Cuba, I was not the actress I am today. I didn't have the knowledge I had today in my field. So how can I translate that to my language? And in a way, I felt really proud of myself for fighting so hard to be good at something. And now I have to translate everything, kind of like, how can I be effective in my language with my knowledge today? Because something is not together. Something is not together. My mind is somewhere. My Spanish is somewhere. It's not like I cannot speak Spanish, but I know what I'm talking about. But here I cannot be effective. And everybody's looking at me. We can speak English. I'm like, no. What?
I want to do Spanish. Yeah, lo quiero hacer.
Déjame hablar, por favor. Espérate un momentico. Déjame decir lo que quiero decir. Y realmente me di, you see, I'm starting to speak Spanish. And then I realized that I fought so hard to be good at this that I have to, because it was not easy. Like I said, I become obsessed about solutions and being open-minded and all that. And I just grabbed that and I just put everything into Spanish. And not just that, because, Ben, and you know this as an immigrant, you want to be effective. I don't want to tell somebody you're wrong, I'm right. I want to be effective with my point. I want you to understand it. Let's talk about it. Let's figure this out. You don't want to push something that doesn't work. You want to transform it. The same thing into Spanish. I'm like, okay, I want to be effective with my people. When I talk to them about what I do, I want to be understood. I don't want to push something that doesn't quite fit if they don't get it. I want to be able to translate it into Spanish with the right vocabulary and it took time. Because you see, Ben, you see what's happening to you is that you are one of a kind that comes from Mexico, lived in Tucson, fought really hard to be who you are today. You're a producer, you're a content director, you're president of NALIP, you are so many things. You were not that person when you left your country. Right. You are this man that you created, this human. Now you have to translate all your knowledge into another language for real.
Right.
And that's hard, right?
I think you have built a superpower, especially your entire body is an instrument to express this artistic vision and expression. And I love that. In the way that I do it is obviously through empowering people, facilitating, making it easier every time that someone's trying to embark on this career. What I'm seeing now is that your superpower, right, as an actor, as this director, because you're also a director and you also write, is that as a content creator, now this superpower that you have in multiple languages, it's opening up a really interesting dynamic here, because you have 500 million eyeballs in Latin America and Spain, right? And sometimes the box office or the ratings in foreign countries is sometimes higher than the US. In your case, you're getting to know, people are getting to know you from a global perspective, because what I love about the show that you're on is that this genre travels. It goes beyond language. But what people don't know that's coming, because there's several movies that are coming out from you on the independent side, and more stuff that you're cooking up behind the scenes. Obviously, I'm sure that you'll reveal it eventually. But I think what's great about this is that now, even though we know where we're from, we got the security of all that background, but we turn ourselves into global citizens. I'm very proud to live here in LA. I'm very proud to be a combination of all the men, everybody that incubated the best values in me. But now that I get to be a global citizen, and that's why I love being in this journey with you, is because now we're imparting, and this is where I'm so proud of, we're getting to demonstrate what we're creating here in LA and projecting it for global audiences. Because people didn't know that, because they were thought, oh, wait a minute, this is where I was getting to sometimes heated, not even heated arguments. Well, maybe when I did a keynote speech in at the European film market in Berlin, right? And the
Oh,
first thing
sweet.
that they asked me, even before I got on stage, they were like, "So what's a Latino in the U.S.? What is that U.S. Latino or Latinx thing that you're talking about?" I was like, "Whoa, that's gonna take me a while to explain," because. But then I basically told them, "Look, guys, here's the premise. The premise is that there's at least 60 million of us living in the US. We're not going anywhere. Yeah, we're a global citizen, and yeah, with a pandemic, we might, move around a little bit, fix it up.
Yeah.
But I'm staying here in LA. I
Mhm.
mean, I plan to have my life here. Obviously, we might be on location shooting or something like that. It's all good, but we're global citizens. But I want to project this image of Latinos being this driving force of creativity that can be viable, meaning that
Yeah.
it's good for business, it's good for their soul, and it's gonna bring something special to their lives. And I'm seeing it on, for example, all week I was watching, because I'm curious about what you're watching too. I'm watching this documentary about rock en español that's made by Nico Antel. I'm watching, obviously, a lot of musicals, like all, because it makes me, because of all the stress,
It's
sometimes
fun.
musicals help.
Yes.
Um, but I'm so proud of that, being able to understand what rock en español has been to our journey here in the
Mhm.
States, but also all these influences. And then knowing that the people that are based here in the US are projecting an incredible vision that could really inspire everybody around the world. So you're doing the same thing. And I'm just curious about what makes you proud, especially now, because you became a new entity per se. Obviously, you're proud of being a Cubana, but you live
Mhm.
in the state, and
Mhm. Yes.
now your family's here. Obviously, your nuclear
Yeah.
family's here, and so now, do you feel? I guess my question is: do you feel a sense of responsibility? I know it's so much weight on the shoulders of representing U.S. Latinos in a way that can help the world understand us better for them
100%.
to understand wisdom. Okay.
I think so. And it's funny. During the lockdown, I started doing karaoke's and chats on lives, and I started doing it 3 times a week. Like I would literally sit down, and I'm like you, music. I don't know if it's Latino or not. Like we just freaking love music. And I would just basically sing in Spanish and English any song from like Juan Gabriel to like
Yeah.
Queens to like singing in Spanish and English. And then then we will do a chat about how can we be better and all that. And music really unite not just Latinos, but Americans, Europeans, because now with social media, and some of them even speak Spanish now. They sing Despacito so many times, like, but it's a celebrating who we are. It's my responsibility. I mean, it's really an exchange. It's really what makes us fun, like being a Latina. It's like, hey, let's sing in Spanish and English. I don't speak Spanish. It's okay. It's let's just put it all out there. And that's exactly what I did, and it just makes you live life richer, like in a very rich way. And then everything started with the karaoke's and chats, Spanish and English. And then everybody's like, hey, Danay, do you make tostones? I'm like, you know what? I'm going to teach you how to make tostones. And then I now have a Cooking with La Familia. Now it's
I
called
love
a
it.
YouTube channel. It's called Cooking with La Familia because they call each other La Familia. And they're like from everywhere. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing arroz con pollo. I already told them what to get and tostones, and we are going to be cooking together. And Ben, there's nothing more exciting. It just fills me up with joy that I get to share a part of my childhood, of my culture with everybody, and we cook together because it's alive. And
Mhm.
and I don't know, it's a responsibility, but it's also fun. It's really fun. I mean, I love my food. It's like, it's like it's exciting. It's like when we meet together, we go to this Brazilian place
Oh yeah.
and it's like it's Brazilian food. It's like it's also it's fun to share what we know, how we're born. It's an exchange, and they teach me stuff, I teach them stuff, and it's like it's a responsibility. And on the show Fear the Walking Dead, the only two Latinos there is me and
Mm.
Ruben Blades. We are the only Latinos in the entire universe. For me, it's huge to play a woman in the apocalypse that is from Mexico, from Tijuana, actually. And it's like little girls, young Latina girls, they really, it's like what you said in a way. Like if you can open a door for someone to see themselves in that place, it really works. It's weird. It's so weird, but and it just creates something. I don't know what it is, but it creates, it's like if he could do it, I can do it too. If she celebrates who she is, I want to do it too. And that's what we're supposed to be about. It's like, let's learn how to make arepas. Let's learn how to make hallacas and arroz con pollo. And it's fun.
I love that about, but I'm glad that you brought up your character. If that's okay, I know that I'm sure that you covered it a little bit in some of the other podcasts. But here's the thing: a lot of people are wondering if there was somebody that would survive the apocalypse, it would be your character because you've been through everything. And so I love what you bring to that role. And actually, if you want to get a little bit on the little bit more in depth in that, I think it represents Latinos overall. We can survive anything, and
Yes.
even though right now. I obviously understand that just based on the numbers that I'm seeing on the infections and COVID and all this stuff that's going on, Latinos are being really hit hard because they're the ones that are the most exposed to the virus because they can't afford to work from home. We're very lucky, obviously, that we can afford to at least be online and all of that.
Yes.
But Latinos are figuring out a way to survive. And that's the one thing that people might not understand about people. Like any person of color relates to us because they understand what it's like. And obviously working class whites, they understand that aspect of it. Like you got to survive no matter what. And I remember, it's been a while back, but I remember reading a story about, I think it was about a rabbi being asked, who would you help, especially in the Jewish community, right? Like who would you help first? Someone who was like recently like a wealthy person or middle class, or someone who was like maybe working class and maybe they lost their job or maybe they were in a really tough spot. And I remember that I was reading the story a while back, and he said, well, the rabbi said, I would probably help that middle class person first because they've never been in that environment before. This is the first time that they got hit by that. And then obviously it's counterintuitive because you were thinking, no, that rabbi would probably help the working class. Like, no, because here's the thing, the working class have always figured out a way to survive no matter what. And that's another reason why, speaking of kinship with different communities, I feel a kinship with the Jewish community because I look at the history, because you and I are nerds, right? And
Yes.
I look at the history of how the Hollywood ecosystem was built. And guess what? It's not that different from you and I, because if you actually look at the history of the founders of the studios, many of them had accents. Many of them came from like Eastern Europe, Middle Europe, like all this, like they all kind of come from similar communities. So obviously many times they moved to New York first and they eventually traveled back to the US. So the establishment of this Hollywood ecosystem was made just like you and I. So it brings me back to your character, to you, even yourself, the way that you're an entrepreneurial woman, is that's why this ecosystem is going to continue to go on, because there's fresh infusion of vision, hunger, talent, uniqueness, people that are so amazing like you. So that's why I think we're going to continue to thrive. And I think that's what people were missing in this Hollywood industry, that Latinos are just kind of like, we're finally coming into this world and we're finally coming into being, and people weren't used to us. Maybe they only saw us as mates or drug dealers and the poor people cleaning. Like I remember seeing a show, even that I remember, what was that show? Black AF on Netflix, right? I was watching that show, and I remember there was an episode about women empowerment, but yet in the background, guess who was cleaning? It was the Latinas cleaning on that show. And I thought, I wonder if they did that on purpose, or if maybe the showrunner is not self-aware about that aspect of it. But now that I see, this is what makes me so proud about you and everybody else, right? But specifically you. You're killing zombies out there. And people are like, what? This character is killing zombies. You don't understand. Seeing such a badass, that hero, right?
Yeah.
She's out there surviving in the world. And the fact that you're such a three-dimensional human being, like the person that's playing that character. So may I say this word in Spanish? They call it chingona. I call you a chingona. And I think that's very reflective. If we go back to this character, that is very Latino. And I think that's one of the reasons why people relate to it. So I know that you knew all this, but I think for people watching, if they're curious, if they're somehow still living in a rock and they don't know about your show or your character, I think they might want to check it out, because it's very reflective what Latinos go through.
It's always the hustle of moving forward. And I feel like I attract characters that I resonate with a mindset in a way. I never attract characters that are like superficial. They're always like on the opposite angle of the spectrum. And I think I attract that because I want to represent not the superficial side of society. I want to represent the hustle side, the raw side, the real side, the brute, the things. I want to represent the things that change us. And I think that when we put ourselves in a place of hustling, you are exposed to, you're ready to deal with whatever comes at you. And to be honest with you, that's the fun part. I mean, who wants like a predictable life? It's, I feel like people, I said this before, people think that now that we're adults, we have to hustle. We had to hustle when we were kids too. Like growing up, it's a hustle. You had to learn how to walk, how to like freaking talk. I mean, language is not easy to us. Like if you put a baby in the jungle, they're not going to speak Spanish. They're going to do things like language is hard, like to learn. Like it doesn't come natural to the human. So we really have to hustle. We have to go to school and learn and deal with mom and dad. And like, just because you're an adult and you start to hustle doesn't mean that you've never hustled before. Like people are so afraid of the word hustling. Like it's like, oh, so much work. No, you've been hustling from day one. This is just a different stage on your hustling life, but it will continue forever. Then being a parent, it's like, you have to teach your kids how to hustle too, like how to be better. It's not easy. And I feel we just have to put ourselves in that mindset and just move on with it, right?
I think so. Well, first of all, I appreciate the fact that you always play really strong women. And people think like, oh, is it just tough and the muscles? By the way, you're always in shape, and I see you shady. But it's strong women that are mentally, spiritually, and all, and they get challenged. That's a good thing about the characters that I'm glad that you're getting a chance to play that, and you're going to continue to play those because you're demonstrating that really strong core that's really inspirational for everybody else. And that's why I think, by the way, not just women relate to you, men. I'm one of them, by the way. Not just because I know you, but that's another cool thing. I don't know if people do that, but like I'm able to distance myself from knowing you and just enjoy the character and be like, you know what? That is the coolest thing ever, because I see the choices that sometimes maybe you make, and I'm like, of all the takes, they probably, I'm sure that you're always giving them like amazing choices for. So I'm sure that they love you on that show. But here's the thing about strong women that you play, but also the hustle aspect of it. You're never gonna stop, even if you're at the verge. This is the difference with other people that experience success. Even if you experience, like most people would just sit on their laurels and celebrate and pop up bottles of champagne and be like, we made it. I'm gonna be honest. This is part of my imposter syndrome. Even if I'm in surreal rooms, right? Like let's say I collaborated with the academy, I collaborated with all this different. I've been in rooms that I never thought I was gonna be part of. Maybe it's a little bit of that immigrant mentality sometimes, right? But I feel like, do I belong here? That's my first instinct, by the way. And how long is this gonna last, right? Because I'm like, uh-oh. And then I don't know if you've done this before, and it's not because I feel uncomfortable or anything, but I'm like, many times I'm usually engaging with the staff. Like, for example, I see waiters and the people, and I'm like, hey, ¿cómo estás? Blah, blah. And by the way, they take care of you, by the way. If you speak the language and everything, they're like, oh, this guy's not a sangrón. This guy's not above. Like, no, I'm cool. Like, and many times I remember at those award shows, like the red carpet and all that stuff, when people go take the cigarette breaks and all that, and you see the employees hanging out and they see you there and they're like, hey, I can relate to you. We're the same people, man. Like, we're good. And they're like, oh my God. And I always felt that about you, that no matter what, you're very humble. You can relate to people that are hustling out there from the subsistence level. Like people are just trying to make it and they see you. The other part of it is that aspect that where you feel like even if you experience success, we know that we have to do better. Like we're never going to say, llegamos al límite. Here's the thing. We're always going to try to go past it. And I think it also has to do with, the difference between rich and being wealthy, right? Yes. Going back to that goal. A lot of people think that, nada más ser rico, ser middle class. right? I think people when they're reaching not just for material wealth, but
Mhm.
we're talking about friends, environments, community, is because they're trying to pass that on to the next generation. And I was thinking about this the other day because I was actually
Mhm.
talking to my brother, who's a mechanic, by the way. Well, he's more than a mechanic. He owns a business that fixes cars and
Okay.
tailor made all that. However, but he's super humble that he's always tinkering under the hood too, and I love that
Yeah.
about him. But I always felt like if my brother and I would have gone into the same business, let's just say that we would have, I don't know, moved to LA together. I've always dreamed about hustling together and creating movies
Uh-huh.
together, right? He went
Mhm.
into a different industry that I went to. But I always felt like if we both had grown up with mentors like you, like myself, I know that he would have like created a dynasty of businesses and passed that family business down to generation. So I guess what I'm trying to build with you, and I guess we're both kind of conspirators in this. That's why I love this about you. That we're not just satisfied with helping our generation, the ones that are now coming up. That we want to instill the better sense of, the better angels in everybody's nature to not just pull people up, but I'm sure that your son and everybody else in your family,
Mhm.
they know that this is what they need to be. Have a
Totally.
responsibility for pulling up the next generation, but also we don't just stop growing. We continue. And then
Yes.
pass it on to the next generation is so important. So now that we're doing that, I feel now that Latinos, right? It's the ones that I usually gravitate to because it's our tribe.
Mhm.
I've always been very inclusive, and I'm so glad that you appreciate that too because you do the
Oh
same
my
thing.
gosh. Yes.
Nuestra gente, when all this stuff that was happening with economic inequality, injustice going on in the world, especially you saw what happened with, obviously with BLM, Black Lives Matter. I think it's important for us to open up, and there's so much diaspora and issues going on like that. Where it's not just to our communities that are going through this, and I feel hopeful, and I think that's the difference with you. You're also very hopeful
Yes.
that even though the conditions seem to be one of the worst, especially here in our country, we're not giving up. So this is where we
No.
marry everything that we discuss, right? The hustle, the
Mhm.
hopefulness, the traveling and the tribe together, making each other better, and paying it forward.
Solutions. How can
Solution.
we keep finding the solutions to keep growing? I think that there's a beautiful saying that said the ones that survive are the ones that are the most adaptable. So how
That's right.
can we adapt who we are to be the best version of us, and not just that, but teach the others that this is the way by example. That's another thing too that I think we need to also teach by being an example of, you have to sell what you are, and be that person. Like, I love people, but I'm gonna be really lovable to people. I'm not gonna just treat them wrong. I'm gonna give them my best every day. It's a responsibility to
Mm.
to everybody. Like, being an example is, it's hard work, but it's the best way to introduce our next generation to a different journey. I did some work here in Austin because I work here on the show for the Boys and Girls Club, and I really focus so much on how can we be an example for each other.
Mm.
You look up to me. I look up to you too, even though you're 10 years old. I look up to you. Just because there's a 10-year-old child doesn't mean that it's not someone that I should not respect. I should respect that little girl, like it's a young woman to be, like it's something that we have to earn and keep working forward. And we've been hit hard in our communities.
Yeah.
We've been hit hard, and but again, we are so resilient, and that's why I wanted to start this podcast with you, Ben, in talking about giving back. I
Mm.
wanted to say, and everybody should hear this. I wanted to tell you that I'm so grateful for that, because I appreciate education so much, because I'm a product of like fantastic mentors. You being one of them. Every time I talk to you, I feel like when I hang up the phone, it's like I have so much going on in my head.
I know.
I have so much. I need to go for a run to digest everything Ben just said, because I want everything to be. And you are like that person. You're like that person that you call and you hang up the phone and you feel smarter. You feel more centered. You feel like you feel like you got somebody in your back, and that is for all the Latinos, Black, African American community. Be surround yourself towards those people that when you hang up the phone, you feel more centered. You're like, I have a friend. I have a, how do you call it? You have a saying for these people, for the ones that are like
Conspirator.
That's right.
Conspirator. It's like we're building this together, and it feels like a secret mission. I always tell people, like, trying to conquer Hollywood. By the way, it's something that's it's gonna happen. I already tell people, but it feels almost like a heist in some case, because all of us have our secret powers and we're doing it together. It feels more excited because I'm like, oh, I see Danay kicking butt on this, and then I see like Jorge Gutierrez, and I see all the people that we work with
Melissa Barrera. I love her. She's fantastic.
Like, Tanya Saracho, Gloria Calderon, like all these folks that are just so amazing. And every day I'm inspired. That's why sometimes I apologize to people that might follow me on Twitter, is because I'm constantly saying props, kudos, congratulations, because I have to make sure that people know who they of course they already know who they are, but I want to make sure we celebrate. I do want to ask you one more question, because I'm wondering, we're entering 2021, right? So what better way to I don't know when it's going to air, but just in
you're
case,
going to be you're going to be the first guest, one of the first guests of 2021, actually.
Awesome. Okay, so
and my first Latino guest. What an honor.
Do you mind covering I don't know how you do your New Year's resolution? Do you do a list, or you have like one specific goal? I don't know if you want to cover yours, and I'll cover mine. What do you think? So
my New Year's
with that. What do you think?
My New Year's resolution is double down on everything I learned this year. Like I went from one extreme to another. I was working full on the show, and before that I did 2 movies, which both of them, which is Spiked and Baby Money. So I did those 2 movies, then I did a mini series, and then I went back on the show, and then crash, lockdown. Like and during the time that I was by myself, I had 2 options: either shut down, like the world is shutting down, or hustle. Hustle meaning like the world needs people awake right now. We can't allow ourselves to just shut down. I can't do that. And I started doing these karaoke and chats, and I discovered a community, and this community now this podcast was born out of that. And I wanted to double down on that, and always feel like it's always be curious and not afraid to try things. Like people would call me and like, Danay, you're doing karaoke, like on with whom? I'm like, I don't know. There are like 4 people showing up. Why would you do that? Well, I don't know. I just feel like I want to make people feel better. It actually makes me feel better. Then the next month will be like 10 people. 10 people showed up, but guess what? We sang. I feel better. I'm giving something good. I'm contributing to their well-being. I don't know them, but hey, they seem really good people, and they grew into something. And I want to double down on that curiosity. Just show up, even though nobody's there. Show up. Just show up. Wake up and just sit down and start talking. Create momentum. There are people out there that need you, and you don't realize about it. And I really want to double down on that. I discovered that part of myself in 2020, which is crazy. In the darkest year, just realize that just show up, even though you're standing there alone. Somebody's going to follow you and be like, hey, you're still here? Yeah, I'm going to come back tomorrow. And show up on time too. Don't be like a, Latino time either. Don't be like a show up and just like come up with plans and do it. And don't worry about what people are going to think or say, who's going to show up. Don't be afraid. I want to double down on that, which is a huge one. Because you discover a part of you that you didn't know you had, like this podcast. Like I'm collecting and growing seeds with you. I'm touching base with people that I love and I care about. And I just want to shine light on everybody. I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. I do that. I want to go back to study. I really want to go I want to be present in one of your summit constantly. I feel like I got so much out of it. I want to learn more about what's going to happen to us after 2020, how our business is going to transform and change. I want to be part of that transformation, learning from that, and I just want to be there for people. I really do. I really do. I feel like more than ever, I feel like being united, like conversations like this, it changes my entire week, it changes my month. It makes sense. It feels good. Yeah.
I'm gonna take that advice. Definitely. I'm gonna take that advice, especially because to me, I think I'm gonna borrow that one because sometimes because I'm so used to being behind the scenes, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not used to being in front of cameras or doing all of that. I mean, a little
You're
bit
so
more.
good at it. You're such a good speaker.
I worry sometimes. Like people don't know this, but you know this about me. I'm a joker. I have my sense of humor sometimes a little wicked, but whatever. But I love to be able to relax, especially when I trust people around me and everything. But I still have, and I need to probably go to your karaoke because I need to borrow that from you, which is dance and sing like you don't care, like even if nobody's watching, even if somebody's watching, it doesn't matter. And I'm gonna take that as let go. I
Let
still
go.
haven't been able to let go. I'm still a little tense inside because of 2020. This year has been tough. And so I'm gonna take that lesson from you. I really appreciate that you sharing that with me. And then obviously the second one, I keep learning. That's very simple. Vas a decir que copión, Ben. You're copying everything about me. No, it's very inspirational. Well, the learning, I think we both have it, but I am obsessed with seeing where this industry is going to go. And I already have a pretty good inkling of where things might go. But anybody that's watching this, whether you're Latino or not Latino, BIPOC, or whatever, I always say this: technology is going to be one of. In fact, the reason we're able to do this show is because of
Look at
the
this.
tools. And so now that it's global and we're able to utilize technology, I would double down on that premise. I want to learn more about, and now people probably thinking about this, like machine learning, AI, data analytics, because I think that's an area of tech where I think more Latinos need to be represented. I am obsessed with the convergence of media, tech, and entertainment, and the way this is transforming and will continue to transform the industry. And I'm gonna be honest, like the first books that I remember reading like 5 years ago about AI, I needed to read them like 10 times over because I couldn't get into it yet. It was really hard to understand. And some people are like, well, it's because of the math. I'm like, no, it's you need to kind of like go all the way to understanding linguistics, like Chomsky versus like the natural way to figure out, how to duplicate neural networks, like the brain. That stuff to me is fascinating because I think honestly, it's going to transform the way we are and relate to one another. Because
Right.
I don't want to just be talking to a bot. I know that here I am talking to a human being with you, and I know that you're surrounded by all these experiences. It's such a rich experience to be talking to you. But I think what's going to happen in the next few years is that if we don't understand these tools and resources, we're going to fall like the way we fell behind 40 years in Hollywood. My feeling is that if we don't understand that and have a pretty good grasp of it and understand the way that we can even launch our own products, that we could fall behind another 50 years in that specific space. And I don't ever want to fall that. So that's keeping me grounded because now I'm having fun. And this is my recommendation. I'm going to continue to look for the Danays like you of the world in tech and music and other industries, because I think the more diverse opinions and perspectives that we have, it makes us better people. So I guess that's my new resolution. I got one more, which is health. This year I had a little bit of I have multiple health scares, but it's mostly because I'm diabetic. So and I guess I don't have vices. Like I'm not I don't drink that much alcohol or any vices, right? My vice is sugar. It's food. And during the pandemic, this is
God, that was hard.
So I'm always stress eating sometimes. So this is my New Year's resolution is to continue to get healthy, to continue to because I want to be alive longer to get to do the work that I do and to continue to empower people just like you, because I want to make sure that we have an impact longer. So I guess everybody that's watching, I hope that everybody's healthy and that we're able to beat this thing.
Yes.
The vaccination and everything takes. But I think it's not going to take into effect like the full vaccination until the third quarter of 2021. But I really
Yes.
hope that our community comes back. But at least for those who are like me that might not take care of themselves, let's do it together. Let's go on runs and yoga and share each other's
Yes.
stories. So Danay, thank you for
Thank you.
honestly everything that you do and for being such an inspirational
Oh
force
my
out there.
God. No, look who's talking. You're the one that has inspired the entire Latino community in this business. You have elevated our game in so many areas, in the areas of writing, producing, directing, showrunners. Like you have tapped into so many areas, actors, women actresses. I've met so many of beautiful girls that I would never meet unless I have a job with them. But I got to meet them in an environment, which is in this case NALIP or like events, and you put us together. And I wanted to thank you and thank your vision for uniting us to be not just uniting us, but to also make us better, make us smarter, like giving us path, encouraging, lighting up the path for us every single day. And by doing that, we just lighting it up for the next generation. And if you can do it, I can do it, and they can do it too. And we do it together. You're one of those cheerleaders that it's important to celebrate and to put the spotlight on and say, hey, it's your time to say something because you've been so great. And I can't wait to see you, grow from being this director of NALIP to like the great producer you are and the stories that you want to tell and produce. That is so exciting to see what you put your mindset on. It's like, it's exciting, and we have to work together at some point, obviously.
Actually, I'm glad that you mentioned that. I think that'll be something that we'll be exploring in 2021, but definitely gonna get back to the reason why I do this in the first place, which is to continue to be the creative whisperer that I am, to be empowered by people like you, but also to get back to producing. So I think that's in the stars, already in the North Stars, to work with you very much sooner than you think. So here we
Oh
go.
no, I can feel it. I felt it, and I'm very, very excited to collaborate in anything that we can do. I'm there, 100%. Thank you
It's in the
so
stars.
much. Thank you so much for doing this. I can't wait to see you. Please take good care of yourself, and we stay in touch. Collecting and growing seeds with Ben Lopez.
You guys want to check us out, just in case you guys are like, what is NALIP? Check out www.nalip.org. And then we're in pretty much every social media platform. And then obviously we love to connect with you. And by the way, you don't have to be a Latino to be a member of NALIP. As long as you care about Latinos moving forward, I think we're good to go.
Sounds good. All right.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on the show.
Always, always. No, my honor is mine. Bye.
Bye-bye.